Have you ever felt like the world around you is trying to tell you something? Maybe you've thought about an old friend, and suddenly they call you out of the blue. Or perhaps you keep seeing the same number everywhere you look, on clocks, license plates, and even in your change at the store. These aren't just random coincidences. They're called synchronicities, and they might be more powerful and meaningful than you think. Synchronicities are like the universe's way of winking at you, nudging you to pay attention. They're those moments when things line up so perfectly that it feels like more than just chance. It's as if the world is speaking to you in a secret language, one that's unique to your journey and experiences. Imagine you're at a crossroads in your life, unsure which path to take. You're weighing your options, feeling lost and confused. Then, out of nowhere, you start noticing little signs. Maybe you overhear a conversation that seems to speak directly to your situation. Or you open a book to a random page and the words jump out at you, offering exactly the advice you need. These aren't just happy accidents. They're synchronicities, and they might just be the universe's way of guiding you towards your true path. But here's the thing. These signs are often subtle. They don't come with flashing neon lights or loud announcements. They're more like gentle whispers, easy to miss if you're not paying attention. That's why understanding synchronicities is so important. Once you know what to look for, you'll start to see these magical moments everywhere in your life. In this video, we're going to dive deep into the world of synchronicities. We'll explore what they are, why they matter, and how you can start recognizing them in your own life. Get ready to open your eyes to a whole new way of seeing the world around you. Now, you might be thinking, so what? Why should I care about these so-called synchronicities? Well, let me tell you why this matters so much. If you're not paying attention to these signs, you might be missing out on some of the most important messages the universe is trying to send you. Think about it this way. Imagine you're on a road trip and you're relying on your GPS to get you to your destination. But what if your GPS is giving you directions and you're just not listening? You'd end up lost, frustrated, and probably very far from where you want to be. That's exactly what can happen when you ignore synchronicities in your life. These synchronicities are like little signposts along your life's journey. They can guide you towards opportunities you might have otherwise missed. They can warn you about potential pitfalls or dangers. They can even lead you towards your true purpose in life. But if you're not tuned in to these messages, you're essentially driving through life with your GPS turned off. Let's say you're thinking about starting a new business. You're excited about the idea, but you're also scared. What if it doesn't work out? What if you're making a huge mistake? Then one day, you bump into an old acquaintance who just happens to be an expert in the exact field you're interested in. They offer to give you some advice and introduce you to some key people. If you brush this off as just a coincidence, you might be missing out on a golden opportunity that could change your life. Or maybe you're in a relationship that's not making you happy. You've been thinking about ending it, but you're afraid of being alone. Then, you start noticing all these little signs. Songs about breaking up keep playing on the radio. You see happy single people everywhere you go. Your friends start telling you stories about how they found happiness after leaving bad relationships. If you ignore these signs, you might stay stuck in a situation that's not right for you. missing out on the chance for true happiness. The cost of ignoring synchronicities isn't just about missed opportunities. It's also about living a life that's out of sync with your true self. When you're not paying attention to these signs, you're essentially turning a blind eye to the universe's attempts to guide you. You might end up making decisions based solely on logic or fear, rather than tuning in to your intuition and the wider wisdom of the world around you. And here's another thing to consider. Ignoring synchronicities can lead to a sense of disconnection from the world around you. When you're not seeing these meaningful coincidences, life can start to feel random and chaotic. You might feel like you're just going through the motions without any real sense of purpose or direction. But when you start noticing and appreciating synchronicities, suddenly the world becomes a more magical, interconnected place. You start to feel like you're part of something bigger, like your life has meaning and purpose. So, the stakes are high. By ignoring synchronicities, you're not just missing out on helpful guidance. You're potentially missing out on living your best, most fulfilling life. You're passing up the chance to feel connected, guided, and in tune with the universe around you. And in a world that can often feel chaotic and overwhelming, that sense of connection and guidance is incredibly valuable. But don't worry if you've been missing these signs up until now. The good news is, once you know what to look for, you can start tuning in to these messages right away. And that's exactly what we're going to help you do in this video. Today we're going to take a deep dive into the fascinating world of synchronicity. We're not just going to scratch the surface. We're going to explore this concept from all angles, giving you a comprehensive understanding that will change the way you see the world around you. First, we're going to explore 5 different types of synchronicity. These are the most common ways that synchronicities show up in our lives, and understanding them will help you start recognizing these meaningful coincidences in your own experiences. We'll look at each type in detail, explaining what it is, how to spot it, and what it might mean for you. Let's take a quick peek at what's coming up. We'll start with number patterns, those repeating digits that seem to follow you around. Then we'll move on to meaningful coincidences, those moments when the unlikely becomes reality in a way that feels significant. We'll explore déjà vu experiences, those strange feelings of having lived through a moment before. Next, we'll dive into the world of symbolic encounters, where everyday objects or events take on special meaning. Finally, we'll look at serendipitous meetings, those chance encounters that end up changing our lives. For each of these types, we'll share real-life examples and stories. These aren't just dry facts. They're lived experiences that show how powerful and transformative synchronicities can be. You'll hear about people whose lives were changed by paying attention to these signs, and you might even recognize some similar experiences from your own life. But we're not just going to tell you about synchronicities. We want to empower you to start recognizing and working with them in your own life. That's why we're also going to share a simple, practical exercise that you can use to become more aware of synchronicities as they happen. This exercise isn't complicated or time-consuming. It's something you can easily incorporate into your daily life, no matter how busy you are. We'll walk you through it step by step, explaining how to do it and why it works. By the end of this video, you'll have a powerful tool to help you tap into the wisdom and guidance that synchronicities can offer. Now, you might be wondering why we're focusing so much on this topic. Well, understanding synchronicity isn't just about recognizing cool coincidences. It's about opening yourself up to a whole new way of interacting with the world around you. When you start paying attention to synchronicities, you're tuning into the subtle messages and guidance that the universe is constantly sending your way. This isn't about believing in some kind of magical thinking. It's about becoming more aware, more mindful, and more open to the interconnectedness of all things. It's about learning to trust your intuition and recognizing the patterns and rhythms of your life. In a world that can often feel chaotic and overwhelming, understanding synchronicity can provide a sense of meaning, purpose, and connection. Throughout this video, we're going to keep things simple and easy to understand. We know that this topic can sometimes get a bit, well, out there. But we're not here to confuse you with complex theories or hard-to-understand concepts. We're going to break everything down into clear, straightforward explanations that anyone can follow. We'll use everyday examples and simple language to illustrate these ideas. Our goal is to make sure that by the end of this video, you'll have a solid grasp on what synchronicity is, how it works, and how you can start working with it in your own life. Whether you're a complete beginner to this concept or you've been curious about it for a while, you'll find valuable insights and practical tips here. So, get ready to open your mind and your eyes. By the time we're done, you'll be seeing the world in a whole new way. You'll start noticing those little winks from the universe that you might have been missing before. And who knows? You might just find that paying attention to these synchronicities leads you to some amazing places in your life. Remember, this isn't just about learning some interesting facts. It's about potentially transforming the way you live your life. It's about becoming more aware, more in tune with yourself and the world around you. It's about learning to dance with the rhythm of the universe, rather than feeling like you're constantly fighting against the current. So, are you ready to unlock the hidden messages in synchronicities? Are you prepared to open yourself up to a more magical, meaningful way of experiencing the world? Then let's dive in and explore the 5 different types of synchronicity that could be showing up in your life right now. Define synchronicity, the dance of meaningful coincidences. Before we dive into the different types of synchronicity, let's take a moment to really understand what we're talking about. What exactly is synchronicity? It's a word that gets thrown around a lot, but many people aren't quite sure what it means. In simple terms, synchronicity is when 2 or more events happen that seem to be meaningfully related, even though there's no clear cause and effect relationship between them. It's like the universe is playing a game of connect the dots, and suddenly you see a picture forming in the seemingly random events of your life. Now, this might sound a bit confusing, so let's break it down with an example. Imagine you're thinking about an old friend you haven't talked to in years. You're wondering how they're doing, what they're up to these days. Then, out of the blue, you get a phone call. You pick up, and guess who it is? That very same friend you were just thinking about. That's synchronicity in action. There's no logical reason why your friend should have called at that exact moment. You didn't reach out to them, and they had no way of knowing you were thinking about them. Yet it happened, and it feels meaningful, like more than just a random coincidence. Here's the key thing to understand about synchronicity. It's all about meaning. These events don't have to be big or dramatic. They can be small, everyday occurrences. What makes them synchronistic is that they feel significant to you. They resonate with something in your life, your thoughts, or your emotions in a way that feels important. Synchronicity is different from simple coincidence. If you're thinking about pizza, and then you see a pizza commercial on TV, that's probably just a coincidence. Pizza ads are common, and you might have pizza on your mind often. But if you're struggling with a big life decision, and you keep encountering people, books, or situations that seem to offer guidance about that specific issue, that might be synchronicity at work. It's important to note that synchronicity isn't about some outside force controlling your life or making things happen. It's more like you're tuning into a frequency that was always there, but you weren't paying attention to before. It's about becoming aware of the interconnectedness of all things and recognizing the patterns and rhythms in your life. Some people describe synchronicity as the universe winking at you, or as moments when the veil between the physical and spiritual worlds gets thin. Others see it as a sign that you're on the right path, or that you're in alignment with your true purpose. Whatever way you choose to think about it, recognizing synchronicity in your life can be a powerful tool for personal growth and understanding. Now, you might be wondering, how do I know if something is really synchronicity, or if I'm just seeing what I want to see? That's a great question, and it's something we'll explore more as we look at the different types of synchronicity. For now, the key is to stay open and aware. Pay attention to those moments that make you pause and think, wow, what are the chances of that happening? Trust your intuition. If something feels meaningful to you, it probably is. Remember, synchronicity is personal. What feels like a powerful synchronistic event to you might not mean anything to someone else. And that's okay. This is about your journey, your growth, and your understanding of the world around you. As we move forward and explore the different types of synchronicity, keep this definition in mind. We're looking for those meaningful coincidences, those moments when the world around you seems to line up in ways that feel significant. These are the whispers of the universe, the hidden messages in the everyday fabric of your life. And once you start noticing them, you might be amazed at how often they show up. Now that we understand what synchronicity is, let's dive into our first type, number patterns. This is often one of the first ways people start noticing synchronicity in their lives, and it can be pretty mind-blowing once you start paying attention. Number patterns in synchronicity are all about seeing the same numbers or number sequences over and over again in ways that feel meaningful. It's not just about randomly noticing numbers. We're surrounded by numbers all the time, after all. It's about noticing when certain numbers seem to pop up repeatedly, often in unexpected or unlikely ways. Let me give you an example. Say you keep seeing the number 1111. You wake up and glance at your clock. It's 11:11. Later, you buy lunch and your total comes to $11.11. Then you get a phone call and you notice the caller's number ends in 1111. By itself, each of these incidents might not mean much. But when they all happen on the same day, it starts to feel like more than just coincidence. Now you might be wondering, what's so special about 1111? Well, in many spiritual and numerological traditions, 1111 is seen as a powerful number sequence. it's often interpreted as a sign of alignment, a message that you're on the right path, or that you should pay attention to your thoughts and intentions at that moment. But here's the thing. The meaning can be personal to you. Maybe 1111 was your childhood house number or the date of an important event in your life. The key is that it feels significant to you. It's not just about 1111, though. Any number sequence can be part of this type of synchronicity. Some people notice 222, others 555, and some might have a personal number that keeps showing up. The important thing is the repetition and the feeling that it's more than just random chance. Let me share a personal story to illustrate this. I had a friend who was going through a tough time, trying to decide whether to leave her job and start her own business. She was scared and unsure, constantly asking for a sign that she was making the right choice. Then she started noticing the number 717 everywhere. She'd wake up at 7:17 a.m. without an alarm. She'd get receipts totaling $7.17. She even got assigned a new project at work with the code number 717. At first, she brushed it off, but as it kept happening, she decided to look into it. She discovered that in numerology, 717 is often associated with new beginnings and following your life purpose. For her, this felt like the sign she'd been asking for. It gave her the courage to take the leap, and she ended up starting a successful business that she loves. Now, I'm not saying you should make major life decisions based solely on seeing repeated numbers. But these number patterns can serve as a nudge to pay attention, to trust your instincts, or to reflect on what's happening in your life at that moment. So how can you start recognizing this type of synchronicity in your own life? The first step is simply to be aware. Start paying attention to the numbers around you. Notice if any numbers or number sequences seem to show up more often than others. Don't force it or go looking for patterns that aren't there, but stay open to the possibility. When you do notice a repeating number pattern, take a moment to reflect. What were you thinking about when you noticed it? What's going on in your life right now? Does this number have any personal significance to you? You might want to keep a small notebook or use a notes app on your phone to jot down these occurrences. Over time, you might start to see patterns or meanings emerge. Remember, the goal isn't to obsess over every number you see. It's about tuning in to those moments that feel meaningful to you. It's about opening yourself up to the possibility that the universe might be trying to get your attention in subtle ways. Number patterns are just one type of synchronicity, but they're often a great place to start because they're so easy to notice once you're aware of them. As you go through your day, keep an eye out for these numerical nudges from the universe. You might be surprised at what you discover. Now, let's move on to our second type of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences. This is perhaps the broadest category, and it's what most people think of when they hear the word synchronicity. It's those moments when something happens that seems so perfectly timed, so incredibly unlikely, that it takes your breath away. Meaningful coincidences are events that line up in ways that feel significant, even though there's no logical reason for them to do so. It's not just about rare events happening. It's about those events feeling meaningful in the context of your life, your thoughts, or your emotions at that time. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're struggling with a big decision about whether to move to a new city for a job opportunity. You're torn, unsure if it's the right choice. Then, in the span of a single day, several things happen. You overhear a conversation at a coffee shop about the benefits of taking risks and moving to new places. Later, you randomly open a book and your eyes fall on a quote about embracing new adventures. Then, you turn on the radio, and there's a story about the exact city you're considering moving to, talking about all the great things happening there. Now, each of these events by itself might not seem that unusual, but when they all happen on the same day, right when you're grappling with this decision, it starts to feel like more than just random chance. It feels like the universe is trying to tell you something. Here's another example from my own life. Years ago, I was going through a tough breakup and feeling really down about relationships in general. I was walking down the street, lost in these gloomy thoughts, when a piece of paper blew right into my face. I grabbed it, annoyed, and was about to throw it away when I noticed it was a page torn from a book. The visible text was all about how every ended relationship brings you one step closer to the right one. It was exactly what I needed to hear at that moment. Now, was it just a coincidence that this random piece of paper happened to blow into my face at that exact moment with that exact message? Maybe. But it felt meaningful to me. It felt like a message from the universe telling me not to give up hope. That's the key to recognizing this type of synchronicity. It's all about how it feels to you. These coincidences often bring a sense of awe, a feeling of what are the chances? They might give you goosebumps or make you pause and wonder if there's more going on than meets the eye. Meaningful coincidences can take many forms. It might be running into someone you were just thinking about. It could be opening a book to exactly the page you needed to read. It might be overhearing a conversation that seems to speak directly to a problem you've been struggling with. The possibilities are endless. So how can you start recognizing these meaningful coincidences in your own life? The first step, as with all types of synchronicity, is simply to be aware. Pay attention to those moments that make you stop and think, wow, that's a weird coincidence. Don't brush these moments off or explain them away. Instead, take a moment to reflect on why they feel significant to you. It can be helpful to keep a synchronicity journal. When you experience something that feels like a meaningful coincidence, write it down. Note what happened, how it made you feel, and what was going on in your life at that time. Over time, you might start to see patterns emerge, or you might gain insights into areas of your life you hadn't considered before. Remember, the goal isn't to try to force these coincidences to happen or to read too much into every little thing. It's about staying open to the possibility that the universe might be trying to communicate with you in subtle ways. It's about paying attention to those moments that feel significant and using them as opportunities for reflection and growth. Meaningful coincidences can be powerful tools for guidance and self-discovery. They can offer comfort during tough times, provide direction when you're feeling lost, or simply remind you of the magic and mystery of life. As you go through your days, keep your eyes and your heart open to these special moments. You never know when the universe might be trying to whisper something important to you. Let's explore our third type of synchronicity, déjà vu experiences. We've all had those strange moments when we feel like we've lived through an exact situation before. It's a feeling that can be both exciting and unsettling, and it's a fascinating form of synchronicity. Déjà vu, which means already seen in French, is that uncanny sensation that you're reliving a moment. It's as if you've been in this exact place, having this exact conversation, or doing this exact thing before. But here's the twist. You know logically that you haven't. It's a moment when your sense of time seems to fold in on itself, creating a bridge between past, present, and sometimes even future. Let me share a personal déjà vu experience to illustrate this. A few years ago, I was on vacation in a city I'd never visited before. I turned a corner and suddenly felt a wave of familiarity wash over me. The street, the buildings, even the smell in the air. It all felt intensely familiar. For a moment, I could have sworn I knew exactly what would happen next, as if I'd lived this moment before. But I knew I'd never been there. It was a powerful, almost dizzying experience that left me wondering about the nature of time and memory. Now, scientists have various theories about what causes déjà vu. Some think it's a glitch in our brain's memory system, a momentary mix-up between short-term and long-term memory. Others suggest it might be related to how our brains process familiar and unfamiliar information. But in the context of synchronicity, déjà vu takes on a different meaning. From a synchronistic perspective, déjà vu could be seen as a moment when we're glimpsing the interconnectedness of all things. It's as if we're briefly tapping into a realm where time isn't linear, where past, present, and future exist simultaneously. Some people believe déjà vu experiences are memories of dreams or even glimpses of past lives. Whatever the cause, déjà vu experiences often feel deeply meaningful. They can leave us with a sense of wonder, a feeling that there's more to reality than what we normally perceive. They shake up our usual way of seeing the world and invite us to consider new possibilities. So how can you work with déjà vu experiences as a form of synchronicity? The key is to pay attention when they happen. Instead of brushing off the experience, take a moment to really feel into it. What exactly feels familiar? What emotions does it bring up? Does it remind you of anything in your life? You might want to keep a déjà vu journal. When you have one of these experiences, write down as much as you can remember. Note where you were, what was happening, and how it made you feel. Over time, you might start to notice patterns or gain insights from these experiences. Remember, the goal isn't to try to force déjà vu to happen or to become obsessed with it. It's about being open to these moments when they occur naturally and seeing what you can learn from them. Déjà vu experiences can be powerful reminders of the mystery of existence, inviting us to stay open to the magic and wonder of life. Moving on to our fourth type of synchronicity, symbolic encounters. This is when everyday objects, animals, or events take on a special meaning that feels personally significant to you. It's as if the world around you is speaking to you in a language of symbols and metaphors. Symbolic encounters can take many forms. It might be seeing a certain animal repeatedly when you're thinking about a particular issue. Or it could be noticing a specific object or symbol showing up in unexpected places. The key is that these encounters feel meaningful to you in the context of what's happening in your life. Let me give you an example. I once knew someone who was going through a period of big changes in her life. She was feeling uncertain and afraid, wondering if she was making the right choices. During this time, she started noticing butterflies everywhere. She'd see them in her garden, on TV shows, in artwork at a friend's house. Even her daily planner had a butterfly on the cover, which she'd never really noticed before. For her, butterflies became a powerful symbol of transformation. They reminded her that change, while sometimes scary, can lead to beautiful outcomes. These butterfly encounters felt like messages of encouragement, reminding her to trust the process of her own transformation. Another common form of symbolic encounter is finding feathers in unexpected places. Many people interpret this as a sign that they're on the right path or that their guardian angels are watching over them. But remember, the meaning of these symbols is personal. What matters is what they mean to you. Symbolic encounters aren't limited to nature symbols. They can involve any object or event that feels significant. Maybe you keep seeing heart shapes everywhere when you're thinking about a relationship issue. Or perhaps you notice clocks stopped at a particular time that holds meaning for you. The possibilities are endless. To start recognizing symbolic encounters in your own life, stay alert to what's happening around you. Pay attention to anything that stands out or catches your eye repeatedly. Ask yourself why it feels significant. What does this symbol mean to you? How does it relate to what's going on in your life right now? It can be helpful to keep a symbol journal. When you notice a symbolic encounter, write it down. Describe the symbol, where you saw it, and what was happening in your life at the time. You might also want to do some research on the traditional meanings of these symbols, but remember that your personal interpretation is what matters most. Symbolic encounters can be powerful tools for self-reflection and guidance. They invite us to see the world as a rich tapestry of meaning, where even the smallest details can carry important messages if we're open to receiving them. Our fifth and final type of synchronicity is serendipitous meetings. These are those chance encounters that end up having a significant impact on your life. It's when you meet exactly the right person at exactly the right time, often in unexpected or unlikely circumstances. Serendipitous meetings can be truly life-changing. They might lead to new opportunities, provide you with crucial information, or even introduce you to a lifelong friend or partner. What makes these encounters synchronistic is the feeling that they're somehow meant to be, that the universe conspired to put you in the right place at the right time. Let me share a story to illustrate this. A friend of mine was at a crossroads in her career, feeling stuck and unsure of her next move. One day, she decided on a whim to take a different route home from work. She ended up stopping at a cafe she'd never been to before. While waiting in line, she struck up a conversation with the person behind her. It turned out this person worked in exactly the field my friend was interested in exploring. They ended up talking for hours, and this chance encounter eventually led to a whole new career path for my friend. Now, you might be thinking, but isn't that just luck? And sure, there's an element of chance involved. But what makes it synchronistic is the timing and the significance. These meetings often happen just when we need them most, providing exactly what we need at that moment in our lives. Serendipitous meetings don't always have to be with strangers. Sometimes they involve running into an old friend or acquaintance at just the right moment. Maybe you're thinking about going back to school, and you bump into an old classmate who tells you about a great program they're in. Or you're dealing with a personal issue, and you unexpectedly meet someone who's been through the same thing and can offer valuable advice. To open yourself up to serendipitous meetings, the key is to stay open and engaged with the world around you. Don't be afraid to strike up conversations with people you meet. Be willing to take new routes, try new places, or say yes to invitations you might normally decline. The more you put yourself out there, the more opportunities you create for these synchronistic encounters. When you do experience a serendipitous meeting, pay attention to how it feels. Does it give you a sense of excitement or possibility? Does it feel like more than just a coincidence? Trust your intuition about these encounters. It can be helpful to reflect on these meetings afterwards. What did you learn from this person? How did this encounter impact your life? Sometimes the full significance of a serendipitous meeting only becomes clear in hindsight, so it's worth revisiting these experiences over time. Remember, serendipitous meetings are about being in the right place at the right time, but they're also about being open to the possibilities that each new encounter brings. They remind us that every person we meet has the potential to change our lives in meaningful ways. Now that we've explored the 5 types of synchronicity, let's talk about how you can start recognizing these meaningful coincidences in your own life. I'm going to share a simple, practical exercise that you can use to become more aware of synchronicities as they happen. This exercise is called the Synchronicity Journal, and it's a powerful tool for tuning into the subtle messages of the universe. Here's how it works. Get a notebook or create a document on your phone or computer. This will be your Synchronicity Journal. Every day for the next week, set aside a few minutes to reflect on any synchronicities you've noticed. These can be any of the types we've discussed: number patterns, meaningful coincidences, déjà vu experiences, symbolic encounters, or serendipitous meetings. For each synchronicity, write down: what happened? Describe the event in detail. When did it happen? How did it make you feel? What were you thinking about or dealing with in your life at the time? Why do you think this event felt significant to you? At the end of each day, take a moment to review your entries. Look for any patterns or themes that might be emerging. At the end of the week, read through all your entries. Reflect on what you've noticed. Have certain types of synchronicities shown up more than others? Are there any recurring themes or symbols? This exercise isn't about forcing synchronicities to happen. It's about training yourself to notice them when they do occur naturally. Over time, you'll likely find that you become more attuned to these meaningful coincidences in your daily life. Remember, the key to this exercise is to stay open and curious. Don't judge your experiences or try to explain them away. Simply observe and record them. You might be surprised at what patterns and insights emerge over time. As we wrap up our exploration of synchronicity, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned. We've journeyed through the 5 different types of synchronicity: number patterns, meaningful coincidences, déjà vu experiences, symbolic encounters, and serendipitous meetings. We've seen how each of these can offer unique insights and guidance in our lives. Remember, synchronicity isn't about some outside force controlling your life. It's about becoming more aware of the interconnectedness of all things. It's about tuning into the subtle rhythms and patterns of the universe and recognizing the potential for meaning and guidance in everyday events. By paying attention to synchronicities, you're opening yourself up to a more magical, meaningful way of experiencing the world. You're inviting wonder and mystery into your life. You're acknowledging that there might be more to reality than what we can see and touch. But it's important to maintain a balance. While synchronicities can offer valuable insights and guidance, they shouldn't be the sole basis for making important life decisions. Use them as one tool among many, alongside logic, reason, and good old-fashioned common sense. As you go forward from here, I encourage you to stay open to the possibility of synchronicity in your life. Try the synchronicity journal exercise we discussed. Pay attention to those moments that make you stop and think, what are the chances of that? Trust your intuition about what feels meaningful to you. Remember, the universe is constantly whispering to us. Synchronicities are like little winks from the cosmos, reminding us that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. By tuning into these messages, you're not just passively observing your life. You're actively engaging with the magic and mystery of existence. So keep your eyes, your mind, and your heart open. You never know when the next meaningful coincidence might occur, potentially changing your life in ways you never expected. Embrace the journey, trust the process, and enjoy the dance of synchronicity in your life.